Hi, this is Vinnie Potestivo, and I am a content strategist, an Emmy Award-winning creator, and the host of I Have a Podcast, the number one podcast for creators looking to make an impact as a career or in TV and film. In this episode, I'm going to share information on how to get discovered, ways to be more discoverable, and things, action items, implementable action items that you can start right now with your team to stand out and to make contact with new audiences.
Hello, fabulous person. Beate Gillette here, the Growth Architect. Welcome back to the Business Growth Architect Show, where we bring you cutting-edge business strategies from some of the world's most successful entrepreneurs, business transformation experts, and visionaries who want to help you to scale your impact. Look for one tangible strategy that you can take back and implement right away. And now back to our guest. Welcome, everyone. And today you are in for a treat. I literally have been waiting to get this guy on this podcast for a while because we are going to blow your socks off, every hair off your head, because it is Vinnie Potestivo on the call with me. Vinnie, I'm so excited for you to be here. Welcome to the show.
Finally, I cannot wait to talk about getting discovered and maximizing our creative skills and everything I learned from MTV in the late 90s and reality television in the early 2000s, and how I'm helping people claim their stories and claim their narrative, change their reality and the impression of their reality and live their absolute best lives.
Yeah, so let's dive into that. So for somebody who has no idea what this is all about, who are you and what should we know about you?
Well, yeah, the less you know about me, the better. Let's put it that way.
I beg to differ. I think it's the exact opposite. We want to know everything because you just dropped a couple of like casual bombs like MTV. I know that there's Emmys and Grammys and all kinds of things. We want to know.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, I was lucky to 25 years ago get my start at a point in time where media was sort of like going from analog to digital. In school in the late 90s, I was the guy in the computer center who was taking his friends' photos and scanning them in. And I was helping people fix their term papers and fixing Excel spreadsheets. And I bring all that weird Microsoft Word experience up because that's the backbone of my entire creative success, is that I had some technical skills. I knew how to create a database on Microsoft Excel, create macros that moved the information from Excel into spreadsheets or one sheets or group information. And I was able to help creative companies like MTV, Fox News, CNN initially, and then many more after that, figure out ways to connect with people and then accurately grab information and stay in touch with them. And that ability of understanding how to create a database and understanding how to meet people, lead with value and meet people and then look for value. Now I have someone. So by the way, this is what happened in October of 98. I had this idea of being a casting director and I took out an ad on something called Backstage. This is where you still can go to this day. You can go if you are.
I know Backstage. Yeah, yes, my ex-husband was an actor.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. If you don't have an actor, if you don't have an agent or a manager yet, if you're non-union, then Backstage is the place to be. It's great for podcasters, experts, people, just us who are looking for a moment, but not necessarily an entire career yet, or we want a career and we're easing our way into it. I took out an ad and I said, I'm a casting director. I'm looking for files for upcoming projects. Send them to me, One Campus Road, Student Box 577, attention, Vinnie Potestivo. And I got about 700 submissions in about 2 weeks. And I freaked out. I turned to a database and I slowly started I would watch Backstage. I would see opportunities and then I would just start emailing them to people saying, hey, I have nothing to do with this. I just saw an opportunity based on what you said on your resume. I think that this might be something you'd be interested in. Like literally started what now became a newsletter and then a website and or maybe even a Discord channel, maybe like a private, message board, weird way of doing it. And it was that technical ability. And when MTV in 99 said, we want to create a development department for talent where we can work with talent, but in non-traditional ways. We don't know what that means, but figure it out. Figure out how to work with talent. We have all these musicians coming into the network. We don't know how to work with them other than be a host on a TV show. And ultimately, our department came up with the Osbournes and Newlyweds and Punk'd and a tremendous amount of unscripted programming that went on to change I think, the television landscape. But how I see it back then, I was so lucky to be at a network where you had to go through a TV network if you wanted to go live and the world see your content. And I got to work with the brightest, smartest, youngest storytellers back then. Mandy Moore, Beyonce, Ashton Kutcher, Jessica Simpson, Ashley Simpson, Sharon Osbourne, Kelly and Jack. I got to work with that entire generation of storytellers that went through television to share their stories. And then in 2007, when I left MTV, at that point, podcasts were already on our iPhones. YouTube already had music. AOL was already like the number one dating site. Media had gotten so much smaller compared to the digital landscape of things. And I've spent the last, 16 years on this private side of content, helping businesses either claim, create, and own their own intellectual property, which is what I like about podcasts. And I want to talk about how we can leverage content when we own it versus what we do at networks where they own it and we have to maximize and amplify content that's not even ours, but it's up for us if we're looking to make money in nonlinear ways that most talent, certainly understand. So all that to say is I've been in the room. I've seen lots of budgets. I've been parts of lots of conversations about legality. I know a lot about content distribution, amplification, aggregation, publication. I figured out a couple of tricks myself on Google that are helping me grow my podcast, and I want to share all that stuff with you.
I know you do. Well, so the reason I wanted you to get a little bit deeper into this because I want to on this episode really dive into taking control and taking charge of the things we really have control over, and that is our own brand and helping ourselves by setting ourselves up to be discovered. So from a strategic perspective, right? So you have done obviously a number of different things in this realm, right? And helped a lot of people to make their mark, to become the character or the brand that they are today. So what role does strategy play as we are now saying, okay, here's who I am. I am a service provider, or I'm a dentist, or I'm somebody, and I want to be more. I want people to find me. So how does strategy even fit into that? Is there a strategy to get this somehow rolled out?
Yeah, I think the role of strategy in content distribution, I think the role of strategy plays is in sustainability. First and foremost, I think that strategy, when strategy is present, sustainability tends to be present. Can you be successful in the content game without strategy? Yes. Is that consistent? No. And that's what I think strategy really helps us do, is have that consistency. And it's not about the amount of times we're posting. It's not even about the amount of times we're creating content. Consistency is all of it. It's the mindset that we use to go into it. It's the mindset when we're looking through our analytics. It's the way that we're trying to get hopefully try to get our content shared more so than liked and saved, even share, right? Being sort of like the global, the universal action that amplifies. I think that if you're looking to have a share strategy, if you're looking to have a content that's based on shares, yeah, I think you have to have a strategy. I think strategy equates to relationships. So I would recommend that you have relationships with other social media accounts, other themed meme accounts, other niche accounts that are compliant with your content, that are aware of who you are as a creator. By the way, I don't want to gloss over this because out of the gate, I'm saying like you should have some friends in memes, meme themes, right? Have other people who support your content. That's like a hard thing to say without supporting it. So I just want to take a second and say my whole career has been based on meeting people. I got paid as a casting director to meet people. It wasn't about who I knew. It was about who I could know and, sort of bring in. So I have I have a career of networking, and I think the best way to introduce yourself to a new account, someone who doesn't know you, who doesn't even care and probably won't care about anything that you've done in the past, even if it's at MTV or Emmys or any award, some people are just not impressed by that outside of the creative environment. I think that the way to make the best impression is to pitch yourself as a source and not as a story. that when I'm reaching out to a meme, I'm not a meme account. I'm not saying, hey, can you post this now? I would never put someone in a situation where I know most likely they have an entire publishing strategy. So the last thing I'm going to do is ask them to do something now when I know they probably have that locked for weeks ahead of time, because of how these automated accounts work.
Yeah.
So I come in as a source. I say, hey, here's the content I have access to that's never been posted before. Here's what I have that's current right now. And in the future, here's what I have. So for example, I have clips with Mandy Moore and Christina Milian and Jamie Lynn Sigler and Danielle Fishel talking about pop culture in the 90s that no one has. I would love to get that on your channel. Right now, I'm currently talking about my guest master. I'm making this up, by the way, but this is actually just happened to be here. I'm talking about my guest mastery book. I'm not asking you to promote my guest mastery book, but I'm letting you know that in 2 weeks from now, I sit down with Ja Rule and Natasha Graziano, and we talk about guest mastery and the power of collaboration. And I have sound bites from that conversation as well. So if any of this information, any of this content would be beneficial to you, please let me know. No part of it am I saying, would you post it? No part of it am I giving you the ultimatum. I'm just saying, if this is interesting to you, let me know. I'm not even giving you the power of authority to tell me yay or nay, interested, not interested. I'm not even putting that on the table. And some of that is framing, some of that is framing. I would get a question when I was in TV, how do you pitch a TV show or how do you pitch a podcast? You go in and you tell them you're doing it. I'm creating a show. It's an amazing show. This is an awesome story. Here are the characters. Here's the reel. Here's the Bible. Here's what happens. I'll see you later. If they grab you on the way out and say, wait, you don't want to do this with us? We love this. How come you didn't? I've never asked ever. And any television pitch network, I've never asked, do we have a sale here or not? It's not me to put that on the table. So I don't put it on the table.
Okay. So
these
I want
are
to
the little
dive.
things that we can do.
I'm gonna have to dive into this now. So
yes.
what you're talking about right now is I don't want to really call it a reverse psychology because that would be like almost diminishing what you just said. But having gotten to know you a little bit, not a lot, a little bit, I think that there is something about the way you developed your brand or how you show up as your own brand that has this, my best friend Vinnie idea, right? That comes with hanging around you, for the lack of better words. But I thought about that when, I saw your name pop up this morning and it's like, oh, I'm gonna get to talk to Vinnie today. It's like, yeah, it's like my friend Vinnie. And it's like, but that's a perception that I have about you based upon our previous interactions. And we've, done a pre-call and we've been in each other's circles because we're both participating in an organization called Pop Match. And we both, participated in the books that they just put out to share secrets on podcasting. And somehow there feels this familiarity without the threat that you're going to try to sell me something or, and I buy in the same philosophy. I may not be as elegant as you are because I do ask for the sale at some point. But I like this non-confrontational, listen-driven, right, or serving-driven idea because it makes people say something about you that goes like this, he really gets me. Because it takes the friction out of it. So is this by design or are you just a natural genius at understanding the psychology of people?
No, I had this gasp and sigh when you said that. I have these literal goosebumps right now. I try to understand you. So the fact that you would say, I feel understood makes me get I really get emotional. Yay. I really, as an empath, I'm mindful of throwing that word around because I've been wrong sometimes. I've been clogged as an empath and there are certain times, certain sensors aren't turned on. And then sometimes the sensor is turned on, but the alert isn't. So I don't know quite what to do with it. But I got into this world of talent. I loved being surrounded by talent. I would get in trouble as a kid. My mom told me to stop hanging out with those 5 kids because those are the 5 kids that got me in trouble. So I went and hung out with 5 kids that were the most talented ones. And they got me into rooms that I never would have been in. And I got to see showcases that I never would have gotten to showcase until I could get to, until I was a person, doing that. So understanding people has been a big part of my journey. Understanding their story and helping them it was life-changing when I learned the power of my story, when I learned that I was a bad storyteller. I was just, guilty of telling the version of the story that I had heard so many times repeated about me that I believed that I was just, or turned into whatever it was, that version of that story that we didn't have. And I realized that I don't control the brand. I can't control my perception, but what I can control are the choices that I do in public. And with reality TV, it's the choices that we make that are then publicized that change reality, right? I've shot series that have never aired. Those people's careers weren't changed only because they weren't visible, and that visibility didn't share, and it didn't lead to discoverability.
Yeah,
but all those choices were made,
And we'll go to the visibility and the discovery, but I do want to talk to you about one thing, because I think one of the very few people I can talk about this. Like you, I work with a lot of creative people. I call some of the people that I work with are 1%ers. And a 1%er is somebody who's literally in the top 1% in their field. But if they're really good at 1%, what happens to the other things they're not good at? So they need people like you, they need people like me to help them to function in the real world. What's different about working with people that are really, truly creative or have the potential or are in the 1% compared to everybody else? Because I think we do want to talk about this because nobody talks about this, how different it is.
Clarity and their positioning. They understand what they bring to the table. And some of my favorite people, where I got to work on a project with Rob Lowe. I got to go to DC and pick this young in early 2000s, young wave of people. And I'll never forget, everyone was like, Vinny, you should call this person, Vinny, da, da, da. And Rob turned to him and was like, let Vinny do Vinny's job, because Vinny's the one that was hired for it. And we trust Vinny to do it. And that level of empowerment, of course, coming from Rob Lowe, someone who probably knew that by giving me the grace to show up as myself, I would go far further than I even thought I was capable of. So some of it is clarity. Some of it is, maybe if you're not in the top 1%, maybe you might you might say, stay in your lane. If you find yourself saying stay in your lane, the clarity, you might be a little close to you're close to clarity. Staying close to the lane, I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, but I want to stay in my lane on this one.
No, I think it's my philosophy on this is, when I work with a 1%, the first thing you have to do is have to release them from the guilt that they have to be really sucky at so many other things, and make them understand that their genius is so specific and is so defined and is so clear that they have no choice but to double down on that, because they literally cannot do many of the other things.
Yeah.
And that becomes the liberating part on where they really step into their genius.
The 1%ers, if they're technical creators, then they know that they need an analytical or strategic creator to complement what their core strength is, right? Like the 1%ers are I'm thinking of Beyonce, maybe might be a 1%er that I worked with, right? Where there's like a super, super small team, but she knew exactly who she was as the creator, and then who the other people were. Look, she comes from an ensemble setting. So even a better example, right? Of knowing how to collaborate and work with some of those people. I think also the 1%ers, they communicate. How do I say this?
Very differently.
They communicate. What's that?
Very differently.
Yeah. Well, they communicate sometimes through goals more so than through actions. Like they can communicate what the larger goal is without needing to tell you exactly what you should be doing to make it happen, because they know that greatness happens when you do your thing. And that's like sort of like why you're there.
That is so true. I'm working with a particular client right now, and she's very darling. She calls me her guru, which I think is a gross exaggeration of my skill. But when I'm in the room with her, I just want to be better. That's that. When you're around this kind of energy, then you want to be better because you can see it so clearly, and you go, I better step up my game now. Because it's like right there in front of me.
There was this moment when I was a casting associate at MTV that we were casting a movie called Carmen, a hip opera. Beyonce ended up getting the lead role. And when it came time to audition Beyonce, I was the casting associate that was in the room. Robert Townsend was the director, the man who created Eddie Murphy Raw. And in the 90s, he was a big director to me and Beyonce. So the three of us were in the room together. Beyonce read her lines. And for some reason, I thought this I don't know. I thought this was my moment. I tried to be all like a director, like I'm like trying to get the angles and Robert says to me, she does her line. And then Robert says to me, Vinny, come here. I just want you to be 6 inches from Beyonce's face. I don't want any fancy camera movement. I don't need to see if she can act. I can see she can act. I'm in the room. All I want you to do is capture her eyes. I said, get so close in the camera in so that all you can see is her eyes. All I'm looking at are if her eyes are moving. And I remember thinking, oh man, I'm getting a note in the middle of Beyonce's audition. Like I'm distracting from the goal of her getting the job. Like I remember thinking I made too big of a movement in the room and attention came towards me and I tried to, I wanted to be small. I didn't want to take away anything from Beyonce. And I made this whole thing about me and I was flushed with red and embarrassed. And as I tell this story now, maybe 20 years later, it hits me like a pile of bricks, the greatness that was in that room that went over my head. Because Robert was not telling me anything. He was not even giving me a single note about camera. He was telling Beyonce exactly what his vision was, exactly what he wanted from her, without needing to tell her, without needing to put someone in a vulnerable situation who's already in a casting situation where you're already being judged and criticized and so many things that are He told me what he was looking for. She did it once. It was done. She was out of the studio in like 5 minutes and we were in production quickly thereafter. But just that clarity and sharing a vision for Robert to be able to tell me the vision that he wanted from Beyonce without needing to tell Beyonce, I want you to focus your eyes or, whatever negative feedback he could have given her to try to correct it. He didn't. And that does not get lost on me in the story. And that's the power of the one percenters. They're open to outcomes. Peter Thomas Roth is another one, by the way. I love this man. Peter Thomas Roth, a skincare guru, by the way. And I'll pitch him an idea. And if he doesn't like it, he'll say, that's a really interesting way to do it. And another way to do it would be to.
Yeah, I teach my clients exactly that line.
Open to outcomes. Yeah, open to outcomes. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's brilliant. They're open to outcomes and that's why I put myself in the room with greatness, because I'm constantly impressed by the opportunities and collaborative moments that come up just by being in the room. In the room. I was at MTV. will.i.am finished his interview on MTV2. He turned to his manager and said, hey, how come I can't host a 30-minute show? How come I can only be in 3 minutes with my music video? And then his manager turned to me and said, can Will host a 30-minute show? And I said, what? This is going to be the easiest phone call of my entire career. I'm very happy to make these phone calls. And there, I was in the room when that opportunity came up in there. So that's where it's so important to not just worry about perfection and making sure you're maximized at every level. Like, by the way, no one wants you at your maximum, because then that means they're not going to want you at your minimum. You get me through the highs and lows. I'm pretty consistent, and there's constant growth.
Yeah.
By the way, constant growth. I'm mindful of the consistency because it can be exhausting.
It is exhausting. So let's talk about, great segue into, how do you get in the room? You have a strategy that you're sharing today with us, and that is all about being discovered. So talk to me about, how do we get discovered? How do we get in the room?
Yeah, that's brilliant. First off, how do you get in the room? It's know that it's people. People open the door. People got the key. People have the power to open that door. It's not a platform. It's not a network. So I'm not pitching to MTV.
Oh, here's my favorite. How about their buying units? I heard once an internet marketer say that she believes that the people in the audience are buying units.
Oh, yeah. No. I couldn't imagine having the mind frame. I have to say something. I'm, about 2 years into my podcast journey. My podcast episodes are maybe somewhere between 500 and 1,000, depending on what I do, downloads in the initial 30 days. So I'm certainly slowly starting to grow up there. But I can tell you that I probably know every single person in my community. And I'm growing at a fast enough rate that I'm happy, but a slow enough rate that I'm remembering names and faces, that I'm still able to make time like this to connect with us and make sure that I'm not overwhelmed by growth, but I'm connected. My purpose in doing this my purpose in the amount of podcast guesting I'm doing right now is, when we are in the top 200 and the top 100, I just want to know my neighbors, because podcasting, we all have our expertise in our own verticals, in our own worlds and our own niches. Suddenly in podcasting, we're all sort of thrown into a room together, and only in podcasting does a kindergarten teacher, a priest, and a Broadway teacher walk into a room and record a podcast, and that not be the beginning of like a joke. You know what I mean? So that being said, the first way to stand out, to be honest, is to not pitch yourself as the story, pitch yourself as the source, which we talked about. When you're seen as a source, you're seen more as a credible destination for more stories. That's just one way that's going to leverage your authority in the beginning of that conversation. That being said, getting in the room is about having a hero. It's about proving to that person that you're capable of doing part of their job for them. It's the part of their job that makes their job easy. The part of their job that allows you to collaborate and come in and do that. And when you do that, when you have that job, when you're in the room and you make that project, what happens next matters most, because that's what keeps you there, right? So now you've got visibility inside of maybe you have a meeting, there's visibility inside, right? And what happens next is the most important part, is sharing. From that meeting that you have with this one person, how are they going to share you? Is it an idea, a concept, a one sheet, an episode, merch, contacts, equipment? I can come up with actually, I have a very long list of things worthy of sharing, by the way. But these are things that help us get discovered in platforms and places where people don't know us. Oh, you have to know Vinnie. Why? This is the kid who did all of the Excel spreadsheets with casting. He just knows how to organize. You have to see the spreadsheet. So they would share the spreadsheet, by the way. Probably bad back then when you think about like information and all that stuff. But
yeah, I was there.
We learn. We learn now. Yeah. Well, now we know, by the way. And back then it's not sharing in the open-ended internet. I'm sharing a file, a good old hard disk file with some, there's person to person interaction there. But that's what matters most, right? After visibility is sharing. If after visibility, there's no sharing, if after our initial meeting, you can't go back to your departmental meeting, development meeting and say, hey, we met with Vinnie and he told us these 5 things, or hey, here are 6 podcasters that Vinnie said that we should be looking out for. Here are 2 places that podcast conventions are really bringing in certain types of audiences, right? Like I'm giving these people information so that they can share it with the people that they're working with. That's going to make them be more valuable in their place of work. And that's going to, I think that's going to inherently bring them back to me because I'm making their job easier. Right.
Like
so
that.
part of it is providing a unique way of service in my own strength. So I didn't show up and say, hey, does anyone want a spreadsheet? No one wants a spreadsheet.
No one wants a spreadsheet.
No one wants a spreadsheet.
No, and nobody wants to be in a newsletter either.
Exactly.
Exactly. So how do we get discovered in that sense? So you talked about, it's almost like we're doing this backward, right? So we have
it's fun. I like this.
And we know it's like, so if you want to be in the room, you want to provide value in the room, and you want what you provided in the room to be shared, then how do you even get
some places
in front of people, right?
How do you get in front of, how do you get discovered at a point in time, by the way, where it matters, where it's going to turn into something, right? Like, maybe I don't want to get discovered during the day on Instagram scroll, because most likely you're not going to see my podcast cover and say, oh, this is the podcast I've been waiting to not find on Instagram. I have to go to some other place and play it now. Here, let me do this, because you bring up an interesting thing about how we're approaching this back from front to back. First is publishing, right? Publishing is where we create content. Then there's distribution, which is where we play content. So we publish it from like a Podbean, an Anchor podcast, maybe. We play it on a distribution platform, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. Then what most of us do is we amplify it. And amplifying it is where we promote our content. Right now, most of amplification happens on social media. If you're good with SEO and you know a couple of things about Google and the power of blogs, then you're probably also amplifying on blog, Bing, and some other search engines that are outside of the social verse because you've realized it's easier to get desktop users to listen to podcasts than it is to get social media users to listen to podcasts. Or at least that's been my personal journey. I don't want to throw that out there. The last bucket is the secret bucket that I think people are forgetting, and that's aggregation. This is where content is curated and culled, where platforms are saying, where I as a user go to a platform and say, I want to read a blog about podcast marketing. When I sit down, I want a brand new blog about podcast marketing. So I go to something called Q, is an aggregator, QUUU.co. It's free, by the way. Sign up and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll get blogs. You tell it exactly what you want. And when you're done reading it, you can share it to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Quora, Twitter, the text-based, social media networks. What I like doing is helping people get into the aggregation system. So if you go to vpe.tv/QUUU, that will take you to the back end of Q, where you can tell Q what your blog is about and then aggregate it out. And the benefit of that is you're meeting people at a point in time where they want to read you, where they want to consume you, and they want to share you. Like it's basically like permission-based discovery. It's like, all right, who's ready to be discovered now? And then I'm like, oh, I am. and it literally helps. It helps because people have the mindset set to share. When people are looking for blogs, by the way, let's say there's 3 reasons they're looking at the blog. 1 is because they really truly care. We'll say that. 2 is they don't truly care. They're just looking for the words to pretend like they care. And they're just going to send it out without even reading it because they just want to be associated with like-minded content. They don't have the time to read it. Yeah. And then the 3rd is the most meaningful one, which is they've read it and they're sharing it with their 2 cents. And the coolest part about it is that I can see the shares, not through the system. I Google my podcast titles, I Google my articles, and I see where they show up on people's Instagram and Twitter, and I connect. And I say, thanks for sharing. Hey, this is mine. Thanks for sharing. Who would have thought that we'd be connected this way? And I close that loop. I don't just let it be open-ended shares. I make sure these people know that they discovered me, because I know the ego. I know
and
the
he's
ego.
Watching. Uh-huh.
Yeah, the ego is watching. We're all looking for our moment to discover something, something easier for our parents, something beneficial for our family or our colleagues. We'd love to be the people who find something and bring it in and help whatever, process it is. And this is, again, one of the ways that we can meet those people who are looking to do that.
Yeah. And I want to add just like a very simple example that literally happened yesterday. So whenever I'm a guest on a show, I always, say in the engagement part, reach out and share with me, what you're taking away. So somebody reached out and said, I heard your interview. It was really great. And then I say, well, what was your takeaway? And he came back with such a brilliant answer, right? That he said, well, when you said this is what I thought. I said, you need to write about this. It's this good. And he goes, oh, gee, thanks. Right.
Well, you're like, I want to read about it.
because I want to read about it because it really was so smart. And I never had thought about it like that. So you're saying, Vinnie, if I understand this not correctly, so we point this really out for our audience, that there is you search for a deeper connection. Wide is good, deeper is better? Question mark?
It's not or, it's and. How about that?
Talk about that.
Well, I mean, look, because of technology, I know that my message can go farther, wider, probably than I'll ever be able to know. That being said, through certain search platforms, there's some discoverability, and I am able to look and find not all, not as wide as the message is. I might not be able to connect with all of them. I talk about MTV, not because I have nothing else to talk about, but because to me, it's a shared experience. This is something that I'm saying we may have probably watched something together through 2 very different point of view, but we saw pop culture at the same time. We were contributing to pop culture or to the content economy at the same time. If you're lucky enough to have built a net, also, I have to be honest, I say a net, but you would say a system, to build a system where you can receive the people that you're meant to meet. So for example, my podcast is I have a podcast because I don't have new guests on my podcast. I have a podcast is a website, and then I do these Google News verified articles on people because this is how I get to meet them, and this is how I get to connect with them, and this is how I get to promote you and your show and your likeness in perpetuity. It's not just a one-off. It's something that I put into aggregation. It's something I pull from RSS, and it's something I promote forever. I built the system to do that. And I want people to know the people around me because I did it on TV and it worked. To be really honest, I just did. It was creators. You see groups of actors that went to school together, 10, Brat Pack, and you hear about all these groups of people that are super successful, colleagues, best friends in college that went on to be film writers and directors and actors, TV hosts that are journalists, and it's the power of working together. And I think that's just like that we have the ability to do that and own it too. The intellectual property piece, the fact that we can create it and we can own it, that we can put our own ads in it, that our ads can serve our services and products or our community, that I can use an ad and say, hey, if you would ever want to put an ad, on my podcast. I love that I have a platform that I have full control over to be able to leverage that space. I'm not quick, and I probably won't ever take on paid ads from a brand on my podcast. I do that on TV. I get paid and on radio. So I take my content and I distribute it AM, FM radio, and I distribute it on broadcast. And we're a television show, a 30-minute television show on Cox, Verizon, Comcast, and about a dozen AVODs. But I'm delivering content. That's not the same thing as allowing advertisers to control my publishing schedule as a podcast. That's something that I want to hold on to pretty tightly. As a podcaster, just my own personal strategy, and based on the experience that I don't want to have an advertising relationship with content, because I had that in television, and I just don't want to have it, because you don't need to have that anymore. And if I do want to have an advertising relationship with content, I can go work in TV. If I'm knock on wood, by the way, that I should say that, and no one would answer my call. But that being said, I'm turning podcasts into broadcast shows. I'm not in podcasts, and I haven't completely abandoned television. I have shows that are in development at HBO and Netflix and at production companies. So I see the power of podcasting. I see what is happening here. It all goes back to people. They call it the creator economy now because it's okay to do business with us. It's kind of insulting if you ask me, the creator economy. That's like, Vinnie, I like your reality show. It's my favorite guilty pleasure. I'm like, you don't have to qualify it. It is what it is. Call it what you want.
You can't just love it, period.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. And I've been through it. I was in it when it was the real people economy, and then it was the influencer economy, and then it was the expert economy. Now it's the creator economy. I think the editor economy is coming. By the way, if you want my predictions of the end of 2023, the curator and editor economy is coming. The aggregation economy is coming, where we realize there's so much, the filter economy, you know what I mean? That's where we're sort of headed. The idea that we need to have control, over the amount of inbound creativity is overwhelming.
I agree with you. And we will be right back after this message while we were talking about, interruptions of this broadcast by an important message. Thank you so much for listening to the show. This is Beate, the growth architect. I'm so excited that you're here. Thank you so much for your time. Have you ever wondered why your business is not growing as quickly as you would like it to be? Well, you may have a business growth blocker. And if you'd like to find out what that business growth blocker is, go and take our brand new quiz at growthblockerquiz.com. And in only a few minutes, you're not just going to find out what that blocker is, but also what to do about it. Again, go to growthblockerquiz.com. And now back to the show. So Vinnie, we have gone all over the place here with platform building, with being discovered, with building your brand, getting into the room. So your favorite strategy is obviously the discovery piece. You also have shared something with me, which I want to just give our audience today. We're already running way over what we normally do. but you have shared one specific strategy about digital awards. Would you mind just sharing that so we can leave them with like one more tangible
Yeah,
takeaway before
this
we
is a
wrap it
great
up?
way to get discovered. And out of the gate, no matter what level you're at as a creator, there are awards that are out there for you. When I figured that out, my mind was blown. It took me 25 years, by the way, to win the Emmy. And it wasn't because it took me 25 years of losing. It took me 25 years to actually apply. And when I figured that out last year, I went gung ho. I literally nose into that search bar and I found over 100 awards that I know most podcasters, whether you're a host, a guest, a creator, a creative, a copywriter, maybe you manage the newsletter, maybe you create the website. There are over 100 awards that you could qualify to win. And this is important to know. These are ways that we stand out, and right out of the gate to know that there's no one walking around Hollywood, tapping Beyonce on the shoulder saying, Beyonce, here are your 9 Grammy nominations. Beyonce has to pay for every single consideration of every producer attached to every submission. So I want to put it out there. Over 100 awards that I think are worthy of winning are available in my Creator Hub. This is something that's always free. That's at vpe.tv. I also have 50 ways to get paid as a creator. Podcasters have a hard time identifying as the word creator. Influencers don't have a hard time identifying as the word creator, but brands pay influencer campaigns, not podcast campaigns. So all the money in this creator economy is going to influencers because they're the ones that are on the lists of creator marketing platforms. Creator marketing platforms are basically like billboards that you put your name on. And if a brand doesn't know you, they'll hire the billboard to say, who do you work with? Who can you connect with, and handle all the pieces to it. So if you're creating content, I highly recommend putting your name on these creator marketing platform lists, because when they find you, and I make somewhere between $5 to, I think at most maybe $4,500 per month just from creator marketing platforms. And I've been podcasting for 2 years now. And by the way, they don't necessarily come to me in the form of podcast promotion. It's a holiday shaving kit for Christmas, but I'm going to turn by the way, this is a true story. So please keep your eye on my feed to see what creative I actually end up landing on. But this is an opportunity where I'm going to get paid to create content. I'm going to turn it into something podcast related, because podcasting is the most important thing for me in my feed. So whatever I create, it will be an amalgamation of shaving for the holidays and podcasting. I can't even imagine what I come up with on that one, because I wanted to feed into this brand that I've created, not hijack my feed. And just by knowing that these platforms exist, by knowing that these awards exist, they're right at your fingertips, and I want to make sure you have access to them.
Yeah. No, when I get these requests to help people with, what is it, pornography, guns, and pharmaceuticals, I do say, there has to be some sort of a value match of some sort for you to be involved. Not all money is good money. I think that in order to get developed, what we're talking about, building a personal brand, a lot of it really does have to do with how you are becoming discoverable. And it has to be in the right space. I find, and I want to close with this, is that when you pick a controversial topic, and controversy gives you eyeballs, but it's a very different kind of discovery. Do you want to share like anything on that? Because I think that needs to be a stern warning for everyone.
Yeah, I come from the old days where someone once said no
all
PR
publicity is good publicity.
All publicity is good. It couldn't be further from the truth. You used to have to, they used to look for the loudest voice, because that's what will cut through the clutter of content. That clutter of content was comprised of 10 channels. Now there are thousands. No. The power of your voice, the control you have in the place where you're discovered and how you're discovered, you have a lot of say and control over that. Now, when I talk about my Emmy Award, I get to talk about Kevin Harrington, Jeff Hoffman, and this amazing Brendan T. Adams, this amazing woman, Samantha, who opened up their lives. And it's about this woman's journey after rehab, the red flags that we can see after rehab, as opposed to most TV shows and in intervention where they go to rehab. When I talk about my Emmy, I couldn't be prouder of the group of people I've won it with, the content that I won it for, and hopefully what happens next. It's these little pieces aren't just, steps, rings in our belt. They're literally molecules that change the alchemy of our output. And if you treat it that way, it'll treat you that way as well.
I love it. That was so well put. Vinnie, how can we find out more about your magic, and how can we be in your circle of magic? And
you're awesome. Well, first off, because addresses change, I hate to throw out an address and have it change. People, if you really are interested in connecting with me, first off, I'm sure you have information on the podcast notes. And while you're looking at those podcast notes, I'd just like to say, give this episode a 5-star review. Like, let this be the episode that pushes us over, that we finally get that 5-star review from you, and share that energy, right? That being said, I'm on LinkedIn. Say hi. I respond. I've been the guy that responds my entire career. It's not going to stop now. I'm a collaborative person, and it all starts with you. And I've got a great tool of tactics and some strategy that I bring to the table, but tactics are really what I lead with, because I think there's a lot of strategy out in this world already, and great strategy too. I just think they could be partnered with stronger tactics that actually get the results that the strategies is set out to do. And if there's any way I can help you, on your journey, don't just wait till the last minute when you need to make the idea on what to do with the deal. Like, reach out and say hi. Keep me in your back pocket so that when the timing is right, we've already got a connection.
My friend Vinnie, exactly. Well,
how
Vinnie,
you doing?
How you doing? This has been really quite a pleasure, and such I feel like we were geeking out here on some of the stuff and going definitely deeper than we often go. But I thank you for your honesty and for your willingness to share so openly. That's what you're known for. And I wish you nothing but the best. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
And that's it for us today. Thank you for listening and watching the Business Growth Architect Show. I enjoyed having you here. And for accountability, just take one of the strategies that you have heard, one thing that you can implement in your business immediately. Please leave comments. Don't forget to like and share this show. And if you have any questions about business, please put them in the comments. We are here for you. We're here to support you and help you to grow, build, and scale your own business. For more advice, please check out our website in the show notes below. Thank you again. This is Beate Gillette, the Growth Architect, and goodbye.